Hello, I'm Christy McFadden, the Chief Information Security Officer here at Utica National. It seems like we're always hearing about new ways criminals are accessing information that they shouldn't. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners have described cybersecurity as perhaps one of the most important topics for the insurance sector today, reporting late last year that data breaches in 2021 outpaced those in prior year, increasing by 68%. Breaches involving personally identifiable information, or PII, like social security numbers, increased slightly from 80% to 83% in 2021. When it comes to conducting day-to-day business at your agency, as it relates to cybersecurity, ask yourself, do you have a website? Do you correspond by email? Process payments electronically? Handle documents and records with social security numbers, motor vehicle records, or debit and credit cards, not to mention your employees' information and your business records? Chances are that you all answered yes to almost every question. Your agency handles a lot of sensitive data. In other words, everything a cyber criminal would love to get their hands on. Cyber breach could lead to serious consequences, including regulatory sanctions, civil litigation, a damaged reputation, lost customers, and the loss of your livelihood. That is why it's critical for your agency to learn how to spot common scams and fraud. Keep your computer software updated. Learn the basics of cybersecurity, what to do during and after cyber attacks, and what you can do beforehand to prevent them. Not use the same password for multiple accounts, and never write your password down or share your passwords. Don't transmit personal information over unencrypted websites, those beginning with HTTP, and only trust valid encrypted sites that begin with HTTPS. The S means they have been secured with encryption. It's important to realize that the HTTPS does not mean they're not malicious. It only means that they are encrypted. Many threat actors have valid HTTPS certificates, so make sure you only use websites you know are valid. There are ways to help mitigate the risks posed by cyber threats by augmenting security tools and best practices with risk management, loss control, and other services. Conduct a cybersecurity risk assessment. This is simply a comprehensive evaluation of various risks to understand the likelihood and impact they could have on your agency. This includes documenting your security controls to identify any potential weaknesses in your systems or processes. These efforts will also help you identify vulnerabilities, improvement opportunities, and ensure you have an effective mitigation strategy to combat the threats that could impact your agency. Some potential mitigation efforts may include improving technology, policies, procedures, and/or security awareness training. The impact of a cyber attack on business could be significant. Cybercriminals seek financial gain by obtaining protected information and intellectual property, or may intend to disrupt your business operations. The perpetrators can be external or internal, foreign or domestic. The resultant activity may expose your business to risks such as reputation risk, which includes public relations issues with customers or the general public; regulatory risk, the inability to satisfy regulatory requirements; operational risk, which would be the inability to process critical business functions; financial risk, the loss of assets, the cost to remediate the issue, or the inability to meet contractual or service level agreements. Could result in legal liability. Or internal human resource risk. Those are issues relating to payroll and employee privacy. You will want to consider all of these risks when performing a risk assessment. Determine the risk mitigation strategies that will be best for you. You can accept the risk and choose to do nothing and accept any potential consequences. You can transfer the risk, assign the risk ownership, transfer it to another entity. It's like if you outsource your payment services, that third-party service provider is now responsible for PCI DSS compliance. You can mitigate the risk, in whole or in part, by remediating, patching, limiting, implementing compensating controls, or avoiding the risk. One example of partial risk mitigation is to keep backups in the event of a disk failure or system compromise. You can insure against the risk. Buy insurance with sufficient limits to cover potential losses. More on that in a moment. Now for some cybersecurity program basics. Security awareness training. The Cisco 2021 Cyber Threat Trends report states that 90% of data breaches stem from a successful phishing attack. Ensure your staff completes at least 1 hour of security awareness training annually, ideally 15 minutes each quarter. Conduct routine phishing exercises to make sure your users can successfully identify phishing. Your public security posture or public cyber footprint is one of the many metrics that can tell the world how secure your organization is or is not. The data is collected by performing a non-invasive scan of your domain. Non-invasive means that they don't actually attempt to hack your network. They perform a scan to see what's externally visible. It's important to monitor non-invasive scanning sites like Security Scorecard, BitSite, UpGuard, and the FICO ISS Cyber Risk Score to understand your public security posture. This information can be seen by anyone on the internet, including threat actors. Please note that we don't endorse any of these tools. This is simply a sample list of the services available. Stay on top of emerging threats. I recommend spending at least 30 minutes 3 times a week reading about emerging threats. Evaluate if you're vulnerable to the identified threats and understand how they could impact you. Document an acceptable use policy. An acceptable use policy should clearly identify what your employees can and cannot do while connected to your agency systems or handling agency data. Personal use of business systems increases the risk of compromise. One of the mitigation strategies I mentioned a moment ago was insuring against the risk. For example, Utica National's cyber insurance product, through our Agents Errors and Omissions program, provides agencies like yours with privacy breach liability coverage, security breach liability coverage, and breach notice response services coverage, all of which can be beneficial to an agency from an errors and omissions standpoint in case a breach happens. Cyber insurance policyholders also receive access to CyberScout, which provides guidance on developing an effective incident response plan, access to risk calculators to help agencies assess data security weaknesses and exposures to vulnerabilities via its vendors, cyber risk management training courses, state breach regulation and notification requirements database, and more. Take your time and do it right. There's certainly a lot to cover when it comes to creating an effective cybersecurity program for your agency. While there are many resources available, a good starting point is the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. The website is located at cisa.gov. Above all, taking the time to create a plan, train your staff, understand your public footprint, stay up to date on emerging threats, and define acceptable use are great ways for you and your team to help protect the agency you've worked so hard to build and make successful.